Help! I'm in a low sex or no sex marriage. Hi, welcome to today's little lesson. Thank you so much for joining me once again. If you are a regular viewer of Little Lessons, you know that for the last 9 episodes, we've been looking at the topic of human sexuality, particularly immorality, sexual desire, lust, and I've really been addressing the kind of sexual struggles that, generally speaking, single people face. And I did my very best, and I'm going to go back and actually look at all the comments and read the questions that were posed and do my best to try to address some of those things. But thanks for all the encouragement. And in this little lesson, and probably a few subsequent ones, one thing that single people are going to learn is that even though that marriage is the biblical solution to sexual frustration, and we cited those scriptures that say that, all sexual frustration isn't automatically fixed by marriage, as many married people will testify, because you put males and females together in marriage and they think different and they are different, and it takes some intentionality for each sex to begin to figure out the opposite sex when it comes to things sexual. All right? So we shouldn't be ashamed or embarrassed to talk about these things. Let's just all admit it right from the start that all of us claim to be believers in a book that is the foundation to everything we believe about spirituality and our life with God. And that book, in the opening chapters, starts with the story of 2 unashamed nudists, right? And there's a lot of other juicy stuff in there. God is the one who thought up of the idea of male and female. He's the one that put the hormones in our bodies. He's the one that put the nerves where he put the nerves. He's the one that it was his idea for the parts and so forth. So, come on, let's just be mature enough to say it's okay for us to discuss this. And these are not forbidden, taboo subjects for Christians. And maybe one of the reasons why we've had so much interest is because sometimes these are treated like taboo subjects. So we're not going to do that here on Little Lessons, obviously. All right, so an epidemic problem is the one that I've just posed at the beginning of this episode. Folks, by the droves, complain. And I know this from my own research, but I know this from being a pastor for a couple decades, that, one or the other person in a marriage feels like, man, I'm not getting enough sexual satisfaction here. And of course, men are more likely than women, it seems. Men are more desirous to have sex more often than their wives, although the reverse has been proven to be the case at times. Okay, so it's not just unique to men. So what's the solution to the low sex or the no sex marriage? Well, the first thing is just to acknowledge from a biblical standpoint that that's not God's will. That's not God's will at all. And so we're going to separate it from just being, our own frustration of our own desires are not being fulfilled sufficiently. But first of all, and I'm not factoring that out entirely, okay? But I'm saying let's frame it, first of all, within biblical revelation. We've already read the scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse number 5. I'm going to read off my little cheat sheet here. Paul says, stop depriving one another, talking to husbands and wives, except by agreement for a time. So he's not saying that anyone should ever agree to a sexless marriage. You can agree to a sexless marriage temporarily. That's the only thing. And both have to be agreeing over that. So that why? So that you may devote yourselves to prayer. Well, that's a whole other subject in itself, that people would actually forego sex, which how often does that happen, in order to spend more time in prayer. That's obviously a commentary on, the importance of prayer. But then he goes, we're pushing that aside. But come together again. That is, you've agreed temporarily to abstain from sex. Talking to married couples here now. Come together again so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. And so a lot of layers of revelation there, but the one that supersedes all the rest that comes through so loud and clear is that a permanently sexless marriage is not God's will. And we could also add to that a low sex marriage. The intermittent thing that, one partner is very frustrated and feeling themselves tempted by Satan because of their lack of self-control. That's where you know that, we're not in God's will because I'm unsatisfied. And so that gives Satan a little potential inroad there, into my life because he knows I'm frustrated. I got a low sex marriage. Okay, so we're facing up to this, okay? Pushing selfish desires aside, pushing any other factors aside, just first of all, focusing on the fact that God's will is continual sexual relationship in marriage. And someone will inevitably ask, well, how old do you have to get before you don't want it any longer? Well, you're asking the wrong person here. I'm telling you right now, you're asking the wrong person. All right. So long after the age of being able to procreate and conceive children, sex is still something that God gives to married couples as a gift to glue them together and to enhance their relationship and their love. Now, there's lots of nuances, of course, in all of this, which we'll talk about in our subsequent little lessons. I guess this is going to go on into part 2. And the way it's going, maybe into part 3, okay? So all I wanted, the takeaway from this little lesson is we're acknowledging that sexless and no sex marriage is not God's will. And you could say it's not God's best, but that's actually, that's lesser than the truth. It's simply not God's will. Well, you're saying, oh, hooray, hooray, I hope my wife will watch this video. Okay, well, maybe she will. Or maybe you're saying, I don't like this message. This is not good news for me because I don't want any more than what we've already got, And I think wives are more typical to say that. I'm going to address all that, hopefully, provide some helpful solutions here the best I can. All right, thank you so much for joining me. Hope to see you on our next little lesson. God bless you.